I truly believe in that. And the beauty of life is not in how do you live, overall, but how do you live every day.
Hello. Hello, Step. So, good to have you here.
Thanks for
We were
having me,
chatting
Paul.
a bit. We were chatting a bit offline. And so I guess, again, without further ado, yeah, what's the story that you like to tell, please?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to your podcast. Um, we have a deep connection going years back, and I was really intrigued when I got an email from you, and I said I got to do this. Uh, uh, the story that I want to tell, I don't know if there's a the story that I want to tell. I just kind of want to chat a little bit about life and issues and the challenges and things that you kind of told me your podcast is about. Okay, so as you know, I'm a professor by trade. Been doing that for a while now, but I also had you mentioned before we started chatting, about multiple careers. I also had multiple careers on a front end, so to say. I was as a youngster, I was really into sports. Had a really quite successful sporting career, especially in track, where I was, national captain for under 15 or under 16 team and national champion. Played soccer afterwards on a high level in the college, and then I also had a somewhat of a music career where I was back in the late '90s when it wasn't that easy to record musical material. Actually, had a little record with a high school band, and then I had some other um, projects. I was on TV with my band. I had a lot of challenges related to health, including one from the like 10 days ago when I fainted at a concert at Aragon. So I think I have a lot to talk about, and since it's your podcast, I kind of want you to run the show and kind of ask me what you want to ask me in more detail.
Yeah. So, pardon my pardon my camera, but you can still hear me. So, I remember a long. I just remember from taking a class. You were you were in tennis. I just remember that.
Oh,
I remember
tennis!
this
Tennis
for
was
tennis.
Yeah, tennis circle is kind of on a recreational level, and I still do that, and I enjoyed the community, and I enjoyed sort of the interactions and meaningful, friendships that you build in a sport like that, because it's kind of a sport where you schedule to play with one person, and then you kind of develop a relationship with those people through matches and before and after. But I did not play tennis on any kind of serious level, although I was a very passionate recreational, and I still am very passionate recreational tennis player.
Hmm. So how long have you been teaching as a professor?
Uh, I started my academic career, I believe, in 2008. If I'm not mistaken, it's so long now. 2000, yeah, 2008 or 2009.
Were you still involved in sports? Because when so you had mentioned that you're pretty heavily into sports as a youngster, but then were you good enough to be a professional?
Well, basically, that's a that's a good question. So my last track event was international competition, which is called Alpe Adria, which means competition between all the countries in Europe. They have either Alp mountains or Adriatic Sea, which that includes, Croatia, Italy, Slovenia, Germany, and so on. And I was representing Croatia, and I was running 800 meters, and I was in the finals, and I had a very good race. And then from a first, I ended up in a fourth place, um, where difference between a second and a fifth person was you know, this much. The first two, uh, the guys who finished first and second, were from Austria, but there were two guys who were naturalized Austrians. They were Kenyan guys. And I remember after the race, I was exhausted, and just I gave my everything, and they seemed to have a much easier time um,
Recovering, yeah.
recovering. And that's when I realized, the margins are so small,
Mm-hmm.
and I might not have what it takes to be a professional
Mm.
runner in a middle distance running. And that was my last race. So your question, do I think was I good enough to be a professional? I think it requires some natural abilities, but also requires a lot of high quality training and resources. And quite frankly, I think if I want to be honest, in both of those areas, I don't think I had what it takes. I had a strong competitive drive,
Mm.
which took me, I think, as far as I, could have gone, because there was very remarkable results that I was producing without, growing up in the city that didn't even have a real track. And some of the natural abilities with how your body is built, the heaviness of your bones and all that. That To answer your question, I don't think so. When it comes to soccer, I think I had a better shot in soccer, but I was kind of combining for too long soccer and track. And then I did play Division 1 in college, and I played some big games. But competition in soccer is even more fierce in a youth categories. That To definitely answer your question, at a time when I was 16, I
Mm.
realized that I was not going to be a professional athlete, and I was actually very comfortable with that. That's where I started focusing more on a college, and that's where I started experimenting more with musical career and
Oh.
and a music. Uh, and that was sort of, I have to say that was a blessing. That looking back, I'm impressed with the maturity that I had that young to because I had a friends who were like, still in the 20s, 25, 26, and they were still hoping to make it pro, either in a soccer or in track or some other sport, and things were just not happening. And then, time eats you up if you don't make a transition to focus more on a school or something else.
Mm.
Uh, at which point you realize whether you're going to rise to the level that you're going to be a professional athlete. That's a difficult question, not just for athletes, but also for the parents. And I see that even now, that sometimes um, there's this mentality, well, as long as you put your mind to it, as long as you work hard and you can dream big, it's going to happen. Reality is that simply doesn't happen for everybody. So
Mm.
especially in the area like sports, where you have sort of objective results, it's not like music, it's not like
Mm-hmm.
art, it's not like many other areas where you can kind of hit the jackpot with a song, or if you will, entrepreneurship. I believe that's true. If you have a drive, if you dream big, if you keep pushing, you can score a big hit at some point. um, because it really does take a one big hit to make it. In sports, I think that's different. In sports, you have to look at the data, you have to look at the results over a period of time, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of make a decision whether, like you said, whether you have enough to be at a professional level. And a lot of times, it is a combination of talent and the resources and the environment that you operate in, whether you have good enough competition to train with, good enough coaches, good enough resources, and all that. So that is uh, I believe, a call that everybody needs to make who is in sports at a certain point. Look back and say, do I go forward or not? And it's not
Mm.
easy, because people put a lot of effort into sports.
How many hours would you train?
I have to say, since I was, I would say maybe 12, I trained daily, sometimes twice a day. I would go to winter camp in the mountains. I would spend a
Mm.
month in Budapest because they have an
Mm.
indoor track. I trained at a very high level, very young. I don't know how many hours, but it was for a prolonged period of time. Um, very intense training. Uh, I would say maybe from when I was 12 to when I was 16, at a time, like 4 years of very hard training, very devoted. You're talking about, making sacrifices, not playing with our friends after school, but going to practice, sacrificing your summers. I grew up by the sea, and, every summer, all day, every day, you're at the beach, fishing, jumping in the water. And
Were your parents athletic?
uh, not particularly. No, they were not
Hmm.
particularly in sports, which is sort of, again, looking back, something that was a blessing, because I think that when parents kind of drive kids to go into sports, I don't think that's necessarily healthy or productive.
Mhm.
Um, so my parents were not actively involved, sort of with, that's something that I wanted, something that I um, kind of pushed for myself. That's how I got in. That's how I got out. Obviously, they supported everything that I wanted to do, but no, they were not particularly athletic, nor particularly in sports in a
Hmm.
younger age. Yeah. Uh,
So you had mentioned that that was basically that was a turning point for you. You said at 16, right? At 16, and then what? So what led you to academia?
that is also a very good question. A lot of people ask me that. So when I decided to go to college, and I played soccer in college and then went to law school. Um,
After college, I mean,
uh,
after high school, yeah.
yeah, when I
After
went after
college,
high
okay.
school, I went to college and law school. What led me to academia was there are two things, right? Uh, Number one is the immediate type of work that you do, and I always like studying. So I like, reading. I like writing. I like, being uh,
You too.
part of intellectual community, being with students. That was a part of the decision. Second one is that everybody, because I'm not originally from United States, right? I'm from abroad. I grew up in Croatia, and I still have a parents there and cousins and a lot of friends around the world. When you take a path where you really seriously want to pursue career in law as a practitioner, then all your time gets eaten up. You cannot have a
Mm,
balance in life where you can, spend meaningful time with your parents or your friends and all that. That was a big part in my decision. Everybody who again grows up overseas or grows up uh, you know somewhere where they're currently not residing, I think he has one issue that's difficult to deal with, and that is the issue of identity. Okay. I'm very deeply
mm,
connected with my Croatian roots, and I
mhm,
also love America, and I'm also deeply connected with America now, especially now when my
mhm,
kids were born here and all that. Then,
mm,
I had that issue where, I was in sports, and I had a kind of a identity as an athlete, and I was into music, and I had identity as a musician, at least in my own head and in the head, some of the people who follow my music. Then I went to college, and then I became professor. I became professor. Then I had identity as a professor. So with all those different identities in terms of what do you do, and different
mhm,
identities in terms of what uh, who you are, growing up in Croatia and then living here, academia was a very good fit to balance all that,
mm,
because it gives me it gave me and it still gives me intellectual challenge, to keep writing articles, to participate in intellectual life, to connect with younger people. Gives me free time to travel and have a meaningful time with my parents and my friends overseas.
mhm,
It gives me some of that creative platform, whether it's to writing articles or through teachings, where you can be very creative, which kind of like connects again with my background in music. In music, I wasn't particularly interested in the musicianship itself,
mm,
kind of becoming a master of an instrument. I'm okay musician, but I was mostly interested in writing songs and kind of like intellectual work in the music, like what do you have to say and things like that. Uh, uh, so to answer your question, well, let me talk academia. It one word is a balance. I had a balance where I can have a lot of free time to be away and to connect with people overseas, including my
Did you have
family.
any sort of role models that you emulated, that you kind of gravitated towards, or
Role models, I honestly can't say I had a. I think that my journey was,
hmm,
so to say, very complicated.
hmm,
Um, Very complicated in a practical way, and very complicated in kind of a personal way. That I I could not have had a role model sort of as a guidance, somebody that I would strive to become.
hmm,
I think it was more of endless journey to sort of find some balance that I can keep all parts of me, gel together. So, I was always worried, and people would tell me that, when people end their sports career, they go sometimes into dark place because they lose their identity. They don't have a structure anymore in life. You have a practice, you have a competition, and after competition you have a results. You either won or you lost, and then after that you try to do better and improve. They lose all the structure in life, and then artists, when they try to create and they can't create, then they resort sometimes to opium drugs and things like that to expand their mind and all that. So I always kind of knew of stories like that, that in order to keep your whole persona together, you have to work hard to finding that balance. um,
hmm.
um, so that, and again, that's a endless journey that still goes on. That was always my main goal, is to find the balance to keep me all together, to keep me happy and satisfied, and
Hmm.
keep me productive moving forward. Uh, that is, I believe, something that's really lacking today. That it's really
Hmm.
difficult to have that balance. People work too much, or people are too focused on a career, neglecting other things, or they're not focused on a career enough early on, and then when they get to their 40s, 45, 50, when your energy level and the drive naturally goes down, you don't really have a platform behind you to build on. So that balance is something that and I talk to that about to my students as
Hmm.
well, that it's something that I work hard on every day. And if I'm looking, when I used to go to Barnes and Noble, I would spend most of my time in a personal improvement section. They had those books.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes they're silly books, but I have really invested a lot of time in kind of trying to keep that word and that goal always close and nearby, of keeping a balance. Yeah.
That actually resonates with me, Step, because after these past couple of years, I've noticed I started taking these I started doing these like mental practices. Example, like a gratitude journal,
Yeah. Yeah.
or even just a journal. You know, because you 'cause, all these things that happening in your life, you want to kind of make sense of it. And so when you started doing it's kind of like and I recently started reading about or learning about stoicism.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, it's pretty meta, but stoicism is like it's not the popular belief in stoicism is that it's kind of like detachment. No, the actual lesson of stoicism is that um for lack of a better term, you can have your cake and eat it too. Example. Seneca was like this really. He was a rich philosopher.
Sure.
So, but every night, what he would do is he would kind of like write off all of his belongings, like as if he was like he was losing all these belongings. So every day he would wake up rich, and every night he'd tell him that all of these things were gone. But then in the next morning, it's like, oh, all my stuff is here. So point being is that as you were saying, mental practices. So I started taking up those mental practices, and it seems to have some practical benefits. And okay, so 5 minutes left. So as I mentioned to you, Step, the format of the podcast was kind of relaying your story, and then I want to kind of like put a bow tie into it, as with a metaphor, and I give you a bunch, and obviously those are optional, right? But how would you kind of like how would you put that as a metaphor, your life thus far?
Oh, that's a very, very difficult question. I think, and if I could just piggyback when you talk about Stoics, I think I read somewhere that in Stoicism they talk about how the worst thing that makes people unhappy is the cravings. That wanting is good, but cravings is very bad for personal happiness. And it's interesting that they talk about Stoics. That every time I'm not a philosopher, and I kind of read it. Every time I run into something, I really like the
Mm-hmm.
Stoics. Whole philosophy, how you can control your reactions to events and not the actual events. And when they
Mm-hmm.
talk about
Mm-hmm.
the cravings, that also resonated. In terms of the metaphors, um,
Humor us, please.
uh, can I ask you a question? What would you say, based on I told you, based on about me? What metaphor would you use?
uh, it seems like a tapestry of life. I like that. I like the jujitsu, sir.
I, I,
Okay.
I honestly, that's the first thing that came to my mind as well.
Oh, really? Great minds
That
think alike, then.
the tapestry of life, in a sense that what is it really that makes life beautiful and complete is when you have that tapestry of different things coming together and putting one uh, sort of pretty tapestry to look at, and something that makes your heart, you know, increases your heartbeat in a positive sense when you look at it, right? How it all comes together. I think, the could I have done better in many regards? When even when you ask a question about professional athletes, when you ask the question, could I have done better in every sense, financially and all that? I think I could have if I wanted to. But
Mm,
that tapestry of life would not be what I needed to be
mm,
for me to have that sort of satisfaction and that sense of balance that I was talking about, that I'm looking for.
mm,
It's always, something gotta give. If you want to do more in this, if you want to make more money, or if you want to do more in the, or if you want to make less money and have a bit more of a bohemic life, that kind of, I think I would, if I've taken more of that route, I would sort of regret it because of my kids, because you kind of, it's
mm,
natural for parents that you want to provide for your kids and kind of be that kind of figure in their life. So overall, looking at that tapestry of life, what I've done and what I have achieved, works for me, and it's something that I set out as a goal, that I want to have a meaningful relationship with my family, kids, parents, that I want to have ability to do things that I love, that I want to have that rich tapestry that comes together, that when I look back at it, that I feel that heartbeat, going up for very positive reasons. Okay, that there's that balance that you're looking for. It's all in that tapestry, rather than seeing like, look, I have all that success and I maybe have all that money, but I really resent, like that movie Up in the Air. I don't know if you've seen that with George
No,
Clooney.
I've never seen it before.
I think you need to see the movie Up in the Air. I think
Up in there,
given
okay. Write that
given
down.
how much given how much we connect, I think you would love the movie. Basically, he goes around the country and fires people for living
Oh,
during the bad times, and then how
oh,
the
with this DiCaprio. Okay, yeah, yeah.
no, not DiCaprio, with George Clooney.
Hanks. Oh,
George
Clooney.
Clooney.
Okay.
It's a George Clooney. It's called Up in the Air. And basically, when he fires people, he tries to uplift them. Looks, this gives you opportunity to do something that you actually love rather than clock in and clock out doing something that you hate. The movie is kind of based on uplifting people when they get fired. And it
Huh.
talks a lot about that, identity, who you are, what do you want, and what kind of I would recommend Up in the Air for you to see it. And then um, I really believe in that it is, a lot of times people clock in, clock out for years, and then when they look back in the tapestry, they feel lots of holes, and that emptiness can never be filled if if um, if you don't work on it.
I want to share with you. I'm a big Star Trek fan, and there was this episode called Tapestries.
Yeah.
Um, in the Next Generation, and well, I don't want to steal the thunder, since we're sharing stories, and basically, it was basically what's that movie with what's that Christmas movie they always play about this banker guy, Jimmy Stewart. What's the name of that movie?
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember
Well,
either.
it's a
Yeah.
Wonderful Life. It's basically a Wonderful Life, but set in space. Anyway, I think that's a very common trope. The what if, right? What if, what if my life had gone this way, or what if I took the conservative decision? Like what you're saying, sir. What's saying, Steph? Like, oh, I could have optimized. I could optimize for money. I could have optimized for like, uh, you know, this career or that career. But yeah, it's.
Balance is hard. I mean, I always tell people when they ask me about that, it's it's a simple word, but it's the most complicated thing to achieve. And that is the reason for that is that is something you have to work on every day. It's not like you're working on something for a week, then you kind of live it. Achieving the balance that works is something that you have to work on every day. And I truly believe in that. And the beauty of life is not in how do you live, overall, but how do you live every day. Okay, if 9 out of your 10 days are bad and one day is absolutely wonderful at a world class level, that's not a good life. It's how do you live every day, and that's why that balance is so important.
I love that.
Yeah.
It was great to connect with you again, sir.
Thank you.
Or
Thanks for
Steph.
having me. Yeah,
And we'll keep in touch.
excellent. Thank you, Paul, so much.
Thank you, Steph. Take care. Bye bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.